Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Rebecca Winkelmann, and at WHU, I'm Managing Director of the Executive Education Activities. This afternoon, it is my pleasure to welcome Professor Dr. Martin Fassnacht, holder of the Chair of Strategy and Marketing at WHU Otto Beisheim School of Management. And in his talk, Professor Fassnacht will touch upon how the Corona crisis changes B2C business. Before we start with the presentation, I would like to give a few housekeeping rules to all of you. So you may have noticed that your microphones and that your cameras are muted by default, and they cannot be unmuted. This is because we're expecting quite a large audience today. And so we try to keep the quality of this webinar high. Nevertheless, we would like to ask you to interact because Professor Fassnacht will first give a presentation, but the presentation will be followed by a Q&A session. So please make use of the Q&A function you will find on your bottom menu bar. There's a small button Q&A to pose your questions to Professor Fassnacht. If you happen to have any technical issues or if you have any comments, please make use of the chat function you will also find on your menu bar down below. One final remark. This webinar will be recorded and the recording will be made available to all attendees. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Fassnacht. As mentioned before, at WHU, Professor Fassnacht is holder of the Chair of Strategy and Marketing. And in addition, Professor Fassnacht is also the Academic Director of the WHU MBA program. And I'm sure there are a lot of MBA students or MBA alumni who are following this webinar today. So welcome to all of you. Next to many other positions, I would like to mention that Professor Fassnacht has been listed as among the most influential economists in Germany by Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung for 3 years in a row. And many of you will know Professor Fassnacht through media or maybe through, his roles as a conference speaker or a strategic advisor. And Professor Fassnacht, it's a pleasure to have you, and the floor is yours.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Dr. Winkman, for this very nice introduction. Good afternoon to all of you. Thanks for being with us. And allow me some remarks before I get really started with my presentation. For me, it's a food of thoughts for B2C business. So some inspiration for your business in the B2C context. My explanations are more on a strategic mindset. I do think that might be very important because the business world is getting more and more complex. And therefore, I think higher conceptual level of thinking is very important to recognize patterns, certain kind of general tendencies, some kind of proposition. So it's on a strategic mindset. It also implies that I'm not going into all details of what I'm talking about. So it's rather a broad presentation and a very deep presentation. I try to cover many topics of the consumer buying behavior, again, on a general strategic mindset, and for some selected B2C businesses. And as you all see here, we have an agenda, and we like to stick to agendas. Firstly, we are speaking about consumer spending. Then we're talking about the marketing management. Sometimes you refer to that as the so-called 4Ps. Then we cover the topic of customer relationship management, then smart data and B2C businesses in detail. Some selected ones. So in total, 5 agenda items. Generally speaking, whenever I started to address the topic of the Corona crisis, and the more I dive into this topic, Unfortunately, I getting more and more the opinion that this topic, in terms of its economic implication, might be the most severe, or might lead to the most severe recession since World War II. I know that doesn't sound very optimistic. For me, I'm an optimistic-minded person. The glass of water is always half full, not half empty. But I want to provide you with a realistic perspective. I think there are some differences as compared to the financial crisis in 2008. It's again a global phenomenon, but it addresses almost each industry, and typically unfortunately, not in an extremely positive way, unfortunately. But again, I'm an optimistic-minded person. I try to provide you with a realistic perspective about the 5 agenda items. So firstly, consumer spendings. As we all know, consumer spendings are very important for the GDP, gross domestic product. And the GDP is very important for the economic situation of a country. So in the European Union, our spending, what we are spending as human beings, make up 55% of the GDP. In the US, it's about 70%. And in China, it's about close to 40%. Again, it's very important what we are spending for the economic situation in each country. Unemployment rate. We're already going to see it. I'm quite sure it's a global phenomenon. Unfortunately, the unemployment rate is going to increase significantly. Unfortunately, I got to say it, but I think that will come out. Our standard of living is relatively going downwards. Again, it's a bit sad, I know. But if you look, we are talking about trillions of dollars in terms of state financial aid or governmental financial aid or support from any important institution in this world. We're talking worldwide about trillions of dollars, and someone got to pay the bill. I'm quite sure that we are going to see that we got to pay in this world higher taxes, that our obliged payment for health insurance is going up, and other items are also going to go up. So our standard of living is relatively seen, unfortunately, going downwards. Home office. We all experience home offices, right? Almost every one of us. We are teaching now we're entirely a digital way, and also we are now doing that with the webinar. And home office has many implications for many industries, namely business trips. I come to this. I'm quite sure that the number of business trips is going to be decreased substantially. Look at the fashion apparel industries. I'm quite sure that you're going to buy a fewer number of apparel/fashion items, because it's not anymore so important to show off, because we still stay that much time at our home. It's not good news for this kind of businesses. Sure, it's sometimes very important to distinguish between very short-term implications and mid-term and long-term implications. I'm not always sure where the differences are, but sometimes I refer to differences short-term and mid-term. So that's about the first one. Consumer spending, very important again for the economic situation. And unfortunately, I'm quite sure that we're going to spend less because the unemployment rate is going up, our standard of living is going downwards, and the home office part is leading for certain severe implications for many industries. But there are always bad news and good news combined. So now when we refer to the marketing management, I'm the holder of the chair of strategy and marketing management. And if you look at this slide on brand management, product management, and sales management. And when I like this term of integrative approach of marketing management, meaning whenever a company is doing something maybe on the branding part that has important implications for the communication, sales part, or product part, or pricing part. Sometimes at business school, I got to admit, we address those topics too separately. In the corporate world, whenever a company is acting on those fields, is acting not only on one field, it's acting on several fields of the marketing management. Therefore, this term whenever you make substantial changes or action in this field of marketing management, you always got to look at implication of 1P, brand management or product management, on other P's, the old terminology of marketing management. We're talking about the so-called 4 P's: product, place, price, promotion. The new terminology: product, price, communication, and sales management. Now I would like to go to the point of brand management. Brand portfolios. Typically, if you look at large companies, they have different kind of brands, differently being positioned. I would like to focus on the price-value price positions. It means low price positions, medium price position, and premium price positions. So low price positions, for instance, Ryanair, EasyJet in the airline industry. The medium price position typically is the vast majority of brands are in the medium price position, such as VW, for instance, if you refer to the car industry, if you look at the premium industry, BMW and Audi and Mercedes are other ones. If you now look at companies, large companies, the corporate holding, the parent brand companies, and they look at their brand portfolio, I think Nestle up to now has more than 1,000 brands, I think even 2,000 brands. Procter & Gamble wants to focus on 80 brands. L'Oreal has about, I think in total, 30 global acting brands. If you look now at the price position of the brands on the corporate holding to the corona crisis, I got to think, if the vast majority of your brands are in the low price position or the medium price position, it might be easier to cope with the corona crisis. As compared, I got to say, unfortunately, as compared to premium price position. Because premium price position means high perceived value and aligned with the high prices. And because the consumer spending is going downwards to the higher unemployment rate, standard of living is going downwards, I think consumers are more keen to buy low price position brands and medium price position brands. Example, if you look at the portfolio of L'Oreal as compared to Henkel in the beauty care sector, I would say the vast majority or average, the brands of L'Oreal in beauty care are on a higher price position as compared to Henkel's brands in the beauty care. And that might be maybe in favor of Henkel as compared in the beauty care sector as compared to L'Oreal in those times. It might be. It always depends also how you manage your brands. But structurally, you might have more advantages if the vast majority of your brands in a certain category are more on the low price or medium price position. It's tougher to be successful at the premium price position. Still feasible, but it's tougher. That's my point. But also, if a company thinks about acquiring a brand, typically, I would say you should think more on the low price position brand and medium price position brand as compared to premium price position brand. Typically, there are always exceptions. We are business administration, we don't have laws. It typically does apply. Second point, number/relevant of brands. That was also true prior to the corona crisis. I think the major driver here is the digital world. To the digital world, the number of brands with whom consumers have a rather permanent relationship is going downwards. The number of brands with whom consumers have a relatively permanent relationship is going downwards. And this is even being triggered to the corona crisis because we're going to see in many industries a consolidation. So the number of brands is also going downwards due to the corona crisis. You already can see that when you look at e-commerce. The e-commerce business in many countries in general is not going up because the fashion industry is very important when it comes to online e-commerce. And people are buying to a lower extent fashion items. And you can see there's one major company which is quite successful in the e-commerce business, even their costs are going up, that's Amazon. Again, the number and relevance of brands is going downwards. That's again being triggered to the corona crisis. That also means for startups, which do capture a larger degree of heterogeneity of brands, it's tougher for them to become successful, unfortunately, I got to say. Unfortunately. But it is like it is, unfortunately. Next point, societal value of brands. People are buying brands because they do satisfy needs. And therefore, companies got to deliver value. We can distinguish between a functional value, emotional value, symbolic, and societal value. If you stick to cars, functional value, a car gets you from A to B. Emotional value, it might make fun to speed up in a car. Symbolic value, you want to show off, you want to impress other people. Societal value means when you're doing good for society, so green products and green services. I think that the societal value component of brands is becoming even more importantly. Some refer to this as purpose marketing. For me, this term is on a too high conceptually level, but it is like it is a societal value component. What brands are doing good for society is becoming more important. That doesn't imply, unfortunately, that the vast majority of consumers are willing to pay more for it. It doesn't imply that they're willing to pay more for it. The vast majority of consumers take it for granted that brands are doing more good things for the society. So that was the topic of brand management. Now, on a lower conceptual level, we refer to product management. And we all know R&D innovation is a very important topic of product management. And if you look at the first topic, categories of new products and new services, it's also for me a hint for startups or potential startups. I think now it's not so much the time for appealing new products, new services. It's more for non-appealing products and services. What do I mean by this? It's more that companies, startups got to think about hygiene-related products, safety-related products and services. So non-appealing because we feel still uncertain about our health, and we are still, the virus is going to be with us, according to the experts, for 2 years or something like that. So it's more about safety. Devices maybe which do measure the distance of human beings, or at airports, or even at retail stores, there's technology out there who is going to measure our fever, or at airports. So this is a new positive side of the story. There's new category of new products and services. I think there's not so much competition in that area. And it's again more about non-appealing products and services. Okay, price levels, I think, unfortunately, again, it's more low-tier, mid-tier positioned. It's not so much premium price position because the money of consumers is getting extremely tight, extremely scarce, limited their budgets. It's more on the low-tier, mid-tier price position. So it's more the EasyJet, Ryanair, and Aldi, conceptually seen, and the VW, which do have chances in new categories. Next point, sales management. Many people are employed in the sales departments, as we all know. Omnichannel sales. So I think there is no alternative. You got to think about multiple channels. From the company's perspective, I'm not only referring to communication channels, so the classical communication channels and the new communication channels, so TV, print, social media on the newer side, but also thinking about sales channels. Companies got to build up sales channels that they have access to consumers, and they can sell directly consumers. Kraft Heinz in UK is now building up own online shops. I know it's not easy because they always got to look at the power of the existing established retailers. For small companies, Amazon, Alibaba might be very interesting, their marketplace model, for instance. But companies got to sell not only to inform, to communicate online-wise, but also got to sell more online-wise. Logistics. It's always a question whether we want to build up your own logistic field or competence field that might be very money intensive. So you got to invest a lot of money, huge investments, or you collaborate with existing players. Delivery Hero, for instance, they are relatively strong up to now, the restaurant business, Now they're thinking into going to the supermarket business to collaborate with established players in terms of delivery, especially the last mile towards the end consumers. I think that is getting definitely more importantly. A first step is, like many retailers or restaurants are doing now, click and collect. You order online and you pick it up on your own. That might be a starting point. We head on or go on with communication management. I'm relative to the communication budgets are going to be cut dramatically. I'm not sure whether this is always a wise approach, because the lower the number of companies who are putting a lot of money into communication, the more share of voice you get if you're fulfilling communication. If you're still sticking to a relatively high communication budget. But generally speaking, even Google and Facebook realize that companies are getting more reluctant to have huge topics, deep pockets to invest into communication. And I think also the motives, the topics which are being used in communication might to change. If you look at many ads, you're together with your friends. And due to physical distancing, that might be not at this point of time the ideal situation. Many companies already have realized that. Next point, sales versus societal orientation. Maybe it's not a versus, a trade-off. Maybe companies got to do both, because finally companies also got to sell. But again, I think the societal values, this topic of purpose marketing, is getting more important for companies. A bit simplified, sales is more with the newer communication channels, social media. You have more personalized information. You can act in a more agile way. As compared to societal orientation, what you're doing good for society, that's more related to the classical communication channels. So TV and print in Europe, for instance. But I think you got to play both sides, because consumers expecting more again from brands that you are doing something good for society. Next point, permanence. I think it's very important in those uncertain times that you are communicating on a relatively permanent basis. That holds true for each size of companies. Maybe on the social media communication chains, podcasts, whatsoever, but do something on a relatively weekly, bi-weekly, or video, whatsoever, in terms of communication. Sure, emails are fine, but maybe a bit more than emails. Permanent communication. In terms of price management, we all know price is the only P which is directly being kept in the profit equation. Profit, revenue minus cost, revenue price multiplied by quantity minus cost. The only P, again, which is directly being kept in the profit equation. Therefore, it's so important for my understanding. Price positions, again, the topic learnings about repetition, low tier and mid-tier price position are typically at this point of time more appropriate as compared to premium price positions. I like premium brands, don't get me wrong, but premium brands does imply you got to give a higher value, which is being perceived by consumers. And if it's going to be perceived, you might charge higher prices. But this perception is getting tougher, I would say. This perception is again getting tougher. Premiumization means trading up. You trade up, you launch new line extensions at a higher price positions. I think typically at the very first glance, you think premiumization is linked to the premium price position. The very first glance, yes. But if you take a broader perspective, premiumization is also an option if your brands are being positioned in the low price position or the medium price position. I think it's easier to trade up in those price positions as compared to the premium price position. I think if you're in a premium price position, it's tougher to trade up. Sometimes even it sounds tough and it's tough. Maybe you got to trade down. Price elasticities, that means when you change the price percentage-wise, how high is the quantity change of the demand? Generally speaking, the price elasticities are going to go upwards, absolutely wise, meaning consumers are getting more price sensitive. I think it's getting even tougher for companies because the price elasticity had been always strong or large on the core product, core service. But I think that's also going to spill over to all the accompanying services, additional product features. Example, the price elasticity in the car industry is very strong or very large on the basic model, the normal model. The price elasticity haven't been so large on all the equipment, the extras, the extra interior and exterior equipments. I think the price elasticity are also going to go up for those kind of equipment, so the extras. That means, again, this is a point that consumers are being more reluctant to spend a large amount of money. Customer relationship management. Importance of the core offerings. I know that sounds boring, but I think if you're generally looking at those times, and I think if you listen to the experts in the medical field, I think this time will last at least 2 years. And I'm not so optimistic. I try to be realistic, still positively minded, that we are going to go up to the same level as what we had prior to the corona crisis in 1 year or 2 years from now on. I don't think so. I think we are going to be on a lower level, generally speaking. There will be always exceptions for the new products, categories I was mentioning, new products, services, but generally speaking, the level is going to be lower. I'm absolutely sure about this one, unfortunately. And the importance of core offerings, I think it's not more the core offerings about fun, excitement. I think it's more about reliability, convenience, easiness of your products. Example, I like a Deutsche Bahn. The major issue of Deutsche Bahn is that their trains are on time, punctual. I'm a member of their relationship program, but that's not really important for me. For me, it's important, not only for me, that the trains are on time. So take a lot of your time, your budget, that your core offering is fitting to a targeted customer group. Especially in terms of an overarching topic, reliability, convenience, easiness. It's not the time for all the extras. Second point, transfer of existing customer relationships. This has been done successfully by some companies. Think about Amazon. The first product category they were starting were books, and now they're selling, I think, in total 550 million different articles. Unbelievable, but true. If you look at Zalando, first fashion, then shoes and other categories. Zalando, first shoes and then fashion. And also Disney, look at Disney. Now they have launched streaming services being called Disney Plus. That means those companies which can successfully transfer the existing relationships to other fields, also Amazon now in the B2B world, those companies have great opportunities, and they're also a major threat of existing companies. Alibaba is also in the finance industry, from my point of view. And those companies who get this successfully done, this won't be a large number of companies, but those companies are very successfully also in this crisis, and they're a major threat of established player in respective industries. Last point here, value-added services as compared to quantity-related price reductions. I got to admit, I'm a fan conceptually of Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime is not a customer relationship program which is focusing on lower prices, meaning the more you buy, the higher price discounts. So quantitative price reduction. They have increased the number of services, music, video, now Champions League, and so on and so forth. Great conceptual effort from Amazon. Think about Amazon has worldwide 150 million customers. To simplify it, customers got to pay on average about $100. That means we talk about 15 billion US dollars cash each year. Or like the Germans are saying, cash and attach each year, 15 billion. But I think in those times, because consumers got to save, quantity-related price reduction. The more you make business with the company, the better the prices you're getting. The 11th unit might be free of charge or 10% off. It's getting more importantly relatively seen, because consumers are reluctant to spend large amount of monies. So the quantity-related price reduction might be now relatively seen of more importance as compared to adding more services. Amazon might be counter-example, but generally speaking, quantity-related price reductions, if consumers are loyal with you, are getting more importantly in those times, and those times are going to last at least for 2 years. Smart data. I could talk about this for hours. I don't want to do that. But I think very important that you also, I think we all realize that also if you don't talk about omni-channel sales, consumers, independent of this size, got to have access to data and got to collect data and got to update their data. I know that sounds quite operational, I got to admit, but this is very important. If you don't have consumer data, it's tough to communicate to them. It's tough to convince them to make sales and all that stuff. And that implies certain efforts. What I always realize that the quality of the consumer data is not always perfect. Consumer insights. I think not only in those times, it's very important that you know your business rather well, that you don't mix up correlation with causality. Causality means something drives, for instance, the sales. A correlation is not a causality. Artificial intelligence is going to help, no doubt about this, but also your gut feeling, your expertise might lead to propositions. So what drives, for instance, the sales, and then you can let it check with the data, hopefully you have access to. So it's artificial intelligence combined with your knowledge of the business. So now I go into more detail about B2C businesses, firstly retail businesses and then mobility industry. Generally speaking, and we all know that cash is king, liquidity is king. If you look at retail business, food and grocery, I think online food, the business is getting more importantly, and it won't change it. It has got more importantly, no doubt about this, and it will stay more or less at this level. Maybe it even increases this level. Apparel, also due to home offices, we don't show off anymore so much. So the trigger to buy new clothes, new fashion items is going downwards. And if you were, I was reading an interview with Mr. Giorgio Armani, he was saying that the entire industry got to slow down. That means the number of fashion collections is going downwards, and it's more about timelessness of fashion. And therefore, I think this is really a major challenge for this industry. Personal care products and skincare and makeup. The first part is more on the normal one. I think personal care in terms of hygiene, health-related topics is getting maybe even more importantly, skincare and makeup. If we are going to wear more often our face mask, then I'm not totally sure whether we are buying at the same level beauty products. I doubt this a bit, I got to admit. Omnichannel formats as opposed to pure players. I think we don't have any more pure players because all the established players in the retail sectors have now increased the infrastructure in terms of e-commerce. Click and collect, for instance, and they won't stop there. They will even enlarge this business. Think about Alibaba and Amazon. They have retail stores, tangible physical retail stores. So it's everything, everyone is now the omni-channel business, established players and new players. Mobility industry, car dealers and car manufacturers. We all know this is a very important field for the German economy. I think I don't want to dive into the topic of e-cars. I think car manufacturers are going to sell a lower number of cars also into the B2B sector, because maybe still companies are buying cars, but I think also they're buying a lower number of cars. For car dealers to service a car is very important. Cars are not anymore being used that often, neither by private consumers nor by professional consumers. I think the business for car dealers is getting therefore much more difficult because to service a car, this is a major income source and the service business going downwards. Public transport providers. I haven't made up my mind yet, I got to admit. I'm not totally sure because there's a trade-off between to protect our climate and as opposed that people might fear to be in contact with other people. So the topic of physical distancing. I don't think that people are going to buy more often own cars because this is a major amount of money they got to spend upon those cars. Let's see, I think over a relatively long period of time, we are still using more than today public transportation, so buses, railway transportation, all that stuff. Air travel industry. This is very, very tough, this industry. As we all know, Lufthansa is now only operating 63 out of 763 aircrafts. Business trips are going downwards. I think this industry got to focus strategic more on leisure travelers because there's still a need out there that we want to travel. And it has also many implications for Boeing and Airbus, because if the business trips are going downwards and the transportation of passengers is the most important income source for many airline companies, this is unfortunately not good news. And we can all observe that worldwide when it comes to airline companies. Tourism, hospitality industry, and sports industry, the last slide of my presentation. Apart from esports, for all of those industries, sub-industries, the physical distancing is of utmost importance. I think customer needs are out there that we want to meet our friends. They want to go out. But because of the physical distancing, and that won't disappear so quickly, this is going to be tougher. Also, the price levels short-term, because the fixed costs are so high, short-term, I think the prices are going to be lower in the tourism sector. But mid-term, due to the consolidation and shortage of supply, I think prices in the tourism industry might even go up mid-term, but not short-term. New fields of businesses, I'm quite sure that restaurants and hotels have new fields of business. Restaurants take away services. Click and collect, if you transfer it from the retail business, or click ordering it online and delivery. I think this is a very interesting business field for restaurants, and also to the physical distancing. The capacity utilization is not anymore as large as it had been in the past. And also for hotels, and some hotels are already offering that, home offices at hotels, that might be a new business field. That means those companies have two kinds of categories of services. The typical restaurant services, you sit down, have your meal, okay, and the takeaway. And that same logically or conceptually, you can transfer to hotels. Ordering and paying contactless. I would add the last point, importance of consumer experience to that. So ordering and paying contactless, in addition, importance of consumer experiences. I think all those companies got to make more efforts to distinguish important processes. Blueprint is an option. So processes, contact between service providers and consumers, which are important from the consumer's point of view and which are not so important for the consumer's point of view. So ordering and paying contactless, meaning maybe those processes or steps of a comprehensive process are not so important, therefore they could be done contactless. If a certain process step is very important from the consumer's perspective, then it's prime time for the service providers. This got to be fulfilled in an extremely professional and friendly way. Those so-called moments of truth, personal moments of truth, are becoming even more important, because otherwise we could stay at our homes. And this is not the wish typically of those industries. Last point, sports industries, virtual as opposed to in-person experiences. This is, if you look at soccer, football, basketball, baseball, American football, I think you might laugh maybe about this one. The in-person experience, this won't be that quickly at the same level as it had been prior to the Corona crisis. the number of spectators are going down dramatically, if at all. That means those companies, if you want to use the term of companies, got to think to replace in-person experiences by virtual experiences. That means we're talking about virtual applause, virtual interaction. And I think there are some opportunities in this game, because what is the alternative? Because physical distancing is in the game for some years from now on. And esports, no doubt about this, this is a sector which has boomed like hell in the last years, and this business will increase significantly over the next years, no doubt about this. And I'm quite sure that the sports industry is undergoing very profound changes. I'm absolutely sure about this one. And so, my dear audience, this was about my foods of thoughts for B2C businesses. I hope to inspire you, your business. I know some food of thoughts. I know it was not extremely detailed, but I did this in 40 minutes. I hope I inspired you. And now I think, Dr. Winkelmann, Rebecca, now it's time for questions.
Thank you so much, Professor Fassnacht, for sharing your insights. It's been very interesting to listen, and also the participants had quite a few questions, quite a lot of questions, and of course you are still invited as a participant to ask more questions. I would like to start with a question regarding Corona discounts. What do you think of temporary discounts that premium brands that usually don't offer discounts in normal times might offer now? Are they good to overcome lower consumer income or harming the brand?
Tough question. It depends very much also on the specific situation of a brand. I don't like discounts so much. Maybe you got to think about trading down products of your existing brand. Not trading up, but trading down products. So products with a lower number of products and or service features. And if you're very much invested in the premium sector, you might think about going or building up or acquiring a brand in the medium price position. Or you add another services free of charge, not to lower the so-called reference price, meaning what we are typically used to pay for a certain premium product.
Thank you. Another question is going in the purposefulness of brands. When people are now more at home and maybe have more time to reflect and think about also value of brands, do you think it's more important now to link it with a need like sustainability?
The point is, what exactly do we mean by societal value? Typically, all of us, I think, we link societal value to sustainability, generally speaking. If you look now at the topic that unemployment is going up, you could also link the topic of societal value, doing something good for society, in terms of maybe what you're doing to increase employment. I know that's a new angle. And again, also if you look at retail businesses, formats, I think in the last years, it depends on the years, supermarkets in Europe have increased their market shares. I'm not anymore so sure about this because consumers got to save money. So it's now more, I think the race is open all now that the discounters are increasing their market shares again, or price entry level. And again, consumers are not, the vast majority of consumers are not willing to pay extra for sustainability. But generally speaking, you got to make clear what you're doing good for the society. Maybe this is something different as compared to sustainability. Doing good for society could also refer to employment or other topics.
There were also a few questions with regards to luxury brands, which is also one of your areas of expertise. And the questions were all around what is your opinion, or what is your estimation? What will happen to luxury brands in the long terms? Is there going to be consolidation? Is the market for luxury brands overall going to decline? Yeah, so
we also, prior to quarter card crisis, we were already observing a lot of consolidation in many industries. I think this trend of consolidation is going up, and it will be triggered by the quarter crisis. And if you look at the luxury brand sector, if you refer to personal luxury goods, about 120 billion are with fashion and leather goods, 110 billion out of 260 billion. And because this is such a large business for those categories, I'm relatively pessimistic for the luxury brand sector. And I think when we're looking back to the financial crisis, it took 3 years to come back to the same level. I think it will take even more time to come to the same level back. I see tough times for luxury brands, very tough times, I got to admit. Even I like this topic of luxury brands, no doubt about this. But again, this is that I prefer to take a realistic perspective. Luxury brands are going to suffer. And we are going to see more consolidation, no doubt. Because look, it is always tougher. Look, the quality, the function value component of almost each brand in the low price position and the mid-tier price position has gone up. And the function value in those times is getting more importantly. That means to justify such a huge price difference between a suit which costs maybe some $100, $200, as compared to a tailored suit of $5,000, this is not easy, if at all feasible. Sure, there's always a small target group out there. And by the way, also the design has become better of the other kinds of brands in the low price position and medium price positions. Design looks more appealing. And the function value component, the reliability, convenience, easiness is very important. You cannot say, and look, the more important online sales are getting, also in the omnichannel business suite, whenever you buy something up to not online wise, it's not so much that you're totally excited. You're not totally excited. The point is, it's more about convenience, speed, reliability, trustworthiness. And this is more on the functional side, as compared to the emotional and also the symbolic side. Home offices, we don't show off so often anymore. And therefore, it's tough for luxury brands. Other questions?
Yes, of course. So this is about how sustainable the impact of this crisis on consumer behavior is going to be. So this is a question about grocery, e-commerce, and also convenience food, which are very, very important right now. And the question is, will consumers adapt back to their traditional buying behavior, or do you think there's going to be a sustainable, long-lasting effect that people will continue grocery shopping online and things like that?
I think we are going to see that this is a long-lasting trend, that we are ordering more online-wise, also when it comes to food. And I think also the number of consumers who are willing to pay extra for delivery, or they got to spend more than a certain threshold, $50, and delivery is free of charge, is going to increase because there's more technology now at retail stores. So they measure the density of people at stores. They even might measure your fever. That means there is almost no shopping experience. If you look at retail stores, their areas to provide retail experiences is about gastronomy. It's about a nice presentation of the merchandise, and that is getting logically tougher, unfortunately. I like tangible retail stores, but just it's getting tougher. And when it comes to convenience, reliability, and online, then the online players have a kind of advantage. And therefore, I think online e-grocery and also online drugstore products is going to be long lasting. And those companies have already invested in their infrastructure and they won't tear down their infrastructure. I don't think so. And maybe we buy only once per week. And that means we could, our threshold, then maybe our bill is higher. And therefore, maybe we could think about a free delivery if you have a bill of 50 or 60 bucks. Or you do it similar like to Amazon Prime. We all pay factually for delivery if we are subscribed to Amazon Prime. It's about $100 in this world per year. We pay for that, but we don't perceive it as payment. Maybe you could think also about a flat rate for delivery services. Some companies are already doing that for delivery part.
One question building up on that. You said there is a shift also to online purchasing and online shopping. And one question is in this regard is if you could say if you see options how the user experience and customer journey can be optimized in this regard in the e-commerce and e-business context.
I think that also depends on the data quality, data protection. If companies know about the purchase behavior of the individual consumers and that is legally everything is fine, consumers might appreciate that. And that means also you got to have a seamless integration of your physical sales channels and your online sales channels. A seamless integration, which is quite complex, and companies are working on that in certain industries. Mars in the pet care industry, Fassnacht too, by the way. Then there is a major topic for IT. They have a unified IT system where everyone more or less has access to a certain amount of data, even consumer-related data. That means you got to invest a lot in terms of IT to make it very seamless, the process for the consumer's point of view, and convenience, speed, delivery speed, also how fast you respond to consumer requests via live chat or whatsoever. We are also going to see that many contexts are going to be automated. I think for consumers, it's not so important whether you talk to, it's realistic, to human being or to a kind of boot or whatsoever, if the request is going to be solved.
Thank you for saying something also in the regard of data issues, because that also has been a question which you already answered now. One question in the other direction in online purchasing is, do you think that customers will value one-on-one meetings higher in the future? That this can be an asset for a brand?
Yes, can be. But we got to be realistic. This can be only for a small fraction. It depends on the size of your customers, but it can be only be relevant from the company's perspective for a certain fraction of consumers. That means consumers who are doing a lot of businesses with you, no doubt about this. There are already some services in place in the fashion industry about one-to-one more or less about this one. But again, this is for a limited number of consumers, otherwise it's too costly for companies. But some consumers definitely, and some fashion companies have done this, by the way, now at this point of time where they're not allowed to sell at their stores, by the way. But it also applies again, you got to have consumer data, but consumers, again, like to have a kind of permanent relationship. Also at the WHU, we communicate with all our students, incoming students, prospects, much more often at those times. And I think even this is going to be over in 2 years from now or something like this, we're going to continue on that path, I think.
One specificity of the German consumer behavior is that Germans do not like mobile payment for some weird reason. So mobile payment has not been very popular in Germany compared to many, many other countries. Do you expect that mobile payment solutions are going to be more accepted in Germany due to the crisis?
Definitely. Contactless payment. Definitely. And if you look now at the German banks, the Sparkassen, for instance, the Volksbank, and they're collaborating now with major player in terms of a mobile payment, and the young generation is even favoring that very much. Definitely, that was an external trigger, no doubt about this.
And maybe one very last, we have a lot of questions, but I'm also...
Still have time. Still have time.
Okay.
There's 283 people in there.
Let's see how we can go on. But one question is on a very strategic level: is now a good time to rethink your customer segments? For example, German company Bofrost, who is basically a distributor, distributor of frozen goods, has seen so many new customers at this point in time, and I'm sure they have expanded to unknown customer segments. Is this
interesting
strategic
question?
Move?
That's an interesting question. I think it's a very fair question, and I think it makes a lot of sense to rethink that. Because to the home offices topic, and we're going to stay more at our homes. We have realized it's going to work, but still we're going to travel, but not as much as compared to former times. Definitely not as much. Also, companies save costs, by the way, and liquidity now is king. No doubt about this. Therefore, it makes a lot of sense to rethink for certain companies their target groups. Generally speaking, but I also observe, because I'm acting as a strategic advisor, I'm more often asked sometimes at those times, because companies have known in the past, prior to the crisis, we got to think about this, but now they take the time to think about this, because now this has become more importantly. So it's a very interesting question, and you might think about definitely new customer groups, because for certain companies, the customer groups are going to be enlarged, or new products, and face masks are going to be a fashionable item. I'm absolutely sure about this. Like scarves. In former times, so when I was young, long time ago, we were only wearing scarves when we caught a cold. This has changed dramatically. Now it's a fashionable item. Now face masks are becoming a fashionable item. At least for a certain period of time, winter times and something like that.
Maybe one last set of questions here. Also in this regard, like at the moment, everyone needs these safety and health related products more than ever, at least in the current situation in this regard. And considering that demand is going to rally as the regular usage of the products is going to be new normal, do you think, or could you describe?
I don't think that the demand is now at a very high peak. But I think the demand is not going down to the same level as compared to prior Corona crisis. I don't think so. Because I think we have learned to be more concerned about our hygiene, generally speaking. Also hotels, I think, because this is a situation, I was asked for my son, Dad, have you experienced such a situation in your life? I'm now 55, I never realized such a situation. And I think that holds true for many people. And it will be with us for some years, 2 years or something like that. That means also hotels got to think about their safety, not in terms of thefts, for instance, but in terms of our health or hygiene. Also restaurants. Therefore, I don't think the demand is going down to the same levels as it has been prior to the Corona crisis. And I think because those items are to be not absolutely why so highly priced, there is some room for premiumization or for mid-tier position brands or for the lower end of the premium price position. Or maybe it might be a very creative or wide idea. Maybe you think about fashion items which prevent you to get a virus infected with. I know that's but this is a bit similar like with the issue of sun. Now you have fashion items which protect you from the sun. And I think this is going to be with us. And if you look at the experts, pandemic situations might occur more often.
And one last question in the strategic direction. We are currently experiencing a phase of disruptive change, and it's probably going up and down for a while now. How can we deal with this uncertainty on a strategic level, as you mentioned at the beginning?
It's a very broad question. I think you got to look about your USP, the unique selling proposition. You got to look at the associations of your brands from the consumer's perspective. You got to look at your target groups. And maybe you're not anymore going to serve certain target groups. Maybe they're not anymore going to be profitable. Or maybe your product or your brand is not anymore so important. Maybe you got to reach new target groups. And you got to look very thoroughly in which way you're relevant or of value from the consumer's perception. That means to get some ideas more specifically out, I would conduct a lot of qualitative research. Not so much the large-scale research, more qualitative research, I would suggest. And we got to be open-minded from a leadership perspective, curious, but we also got to be transparent. I think when we talk to our people, so to speak, it's very, very important that we are transparent, reliable, and that we are also open-minded. And sometimes we don't even know each detail or something like that. I think it's also very important, especially for the internal communication. And it's very important to be in a business which is long-term relevant for consumers. Yeah, this, I know it's a bit broad, I know, but it also depends on the specific situation. But you really got to understand what your USP is on a very detailed kind of subconscious, so to speak, level from the consumer's perspective, therefore qualitative research.
Professor Fassnacht, once again, thank you very much for holding this webinar. Thank you for openly answering all the questions. Unfortunately, time ran up quite quickly now, and maybe you would like to share some last words, last thoughts in the round of participants.
Yeah, first of all, thanks a lot to all of you who have attended the session. I provide you with food of thoughts again for B2C businesses. Again, I'm an optimistic person, even though I know not everything were great news, I know that, but be positively minded, and there are always chances out that the glass is always half full, and take a look at the recorded version, and stay in touch if you want to do that. Okay, thanks a lot again. I wish you all the best for your business, and a great evening. Thanks for being with us. Thank you, and thanks to the team, Dr. Winkman, Wieland, the support people in the background. Thanks a lot to you, and a nice evening to you. Thank you. Bye-bye.